Today we'll be exploring the case of Susan Wright, a woman from Houston, Texas, who made headlines when she killed her husband Jeff Wright in 2003. Susan's case is one that has captivated many, as it is an example of what can happen when someone is pushed too far. In this video, we'll be delving into Susan's background, how her marriage fell apart, and the events that led up to the fatal night when she killed her husband. We'll also examine the trial and the arguments made by both the prosecution and the defense. Susan Wyche was born on April 24, 1976, in Houston, Texas. After graduating high school, she worked as an exotic dancer for 8 weeks before enrolling in a nursing program and finding work at a hair salon. However, she quit school due to it being too expensive and time-consuming. In 1997, while working as a restaurant waitress in Galveston, Texas, Susan met Jeff Wright. A few months into their relationship, Susan announced she was pregnant, and Jeff proposed. 2 weeks later, they were married in a small ceremony just outside Houston, Texas. In 2002, the couple had another child, a daughter. After the birth of their son, Bradley, Jeff and Susan bought a home in Houston and worked hard to maintain it. However, chaos brewed underneath the surface of their public facade. Jeff still used drugs regularly, leading to aggressive behavior towards Susan and their children. Despite her pleas, Jeff believed he was entitled to his behavior. Susan grew weary and eventually decided to end the nightmare of their marriage. But another nightmare was about to begin for Susan and her children. On January 13, 2003, Jeff hit his son Bradley a little too hard while they were play fighting, causing him to cry. Worried about Susan's reaction, Jeff was relieved when she didn't seem to notice and continued to enjoy his cocaine high. Later that night, Susan surprised Jeff by wearing a silk bathrobe and leading him to a bedroom aglow with red candles and soft music. Excited by the cocaine, Jeff was further aroused when Susan seductively tied him to the bed's headboard and footboard. On January 13, 2003, after Susan had bound her husband to their bed, she began enacting her plan to end the abuse. She poured hot candle wax onto Jeff's inner thigh before suddenly attacking his groin with a knife. As Jeff watched in horror, Susan continued to stab and slice at his body. Despite his attempts to break free and seek medical help, Jeff was repeatedly stabbed by Susan, who was enraged by the injustices he had committed against her and their children. After 193 blows, Susan dropped the knife and slid off the bed, leaving Jeff dead on the bed. After killing her husband, Susan sat on the floor to come to terms with what she had done. She knew that she couldn't go to prison for murder, so she had to take care of business. Steeling herself, she turned on the bedroom light and was shocked at the amount of blood everywhere. Susan nearly panicked, but she pulled herself together and went to shower. Then, she called her in-laws 150 miles away in Austin and told them that Jeff had returned home from boxing lessons in a rage and taken out his anger on her and their son. Susan ranted and cried for over an hour, but Jeff's body still lay dead in the master bedroom, and she had to figure out what to do next. Susan realized that burying Jeff's body in the hole for the fountain wasn't the best idea, but it was too late. Rigor mortis made it hard to fit him in. After cramming him in, she started covering him with dirt. Susan then cleaned up the bloodstains, starting from the bedroom to the patio. She put the bloody sheets in a garbage bag and the bloody mattress in the backyard. After running errands with the kids, Susan went back to cleaning the crime scene. She even bought paint to cover the bloodstains. When she was finished, she thought everything looked normal, except for the bleach spot. However, she knew that thinking and knowing were two different things. Susan called Jeff's parents and told them that he had returned home to collect his clothing, and they had a shouting match. Jeff was so angry that he took a bottle of bleach and shook it all over the bedroom and her clothing. The Wrights were perplexed and more desperate to talk with him. Susan also received calls from Jeff's boss and her neighbor, to whom she told the same story. Before long, she realized time was running out, and some of these people might show up. On January 15, 2003, Susan walked into Precinct 4 of the Harris County Constable's office and filed a report. She told police she was fearful of what would happen when her husband returned and discovered she had reported the incident to police, so she was granted a restraining order for her and the children. On Saturday, Susan was about to break under pressure. The family's little Chow Mix dog had begun digging at the thin layer of potting soil she had spread across the grave. Now Jeff's arm reached out from the ground, and the dog had chewed his hand off. Susan took her children to her mother's home and finally admitted to killing Jeff. After sending her children to stay with her sister, Susan's mother helped her hire a criminal defense attorney. Susan later notified police of Jeff's body's location. Although Susan thought she had erased all signs of the murder, the police found blood in the bedroom. Susan turned herself in on January 24, 2003, and her trial started on February 24, 2004. Susan Wright took the stand in her defense and claimed that she killed Jeff in self-defense after he attacked her with a knife while screaming, "Die, bitch!" She testified that she stabbed him almost 200 times because she was terrified he would kill her if she stopped. Susan cried on the stand as she described her state of mind during the murder, saying she couldn't stop stabbing him because she didn't want to die. She claimed that after years of physical and emotional abuse, she finally decided to fight back. Prosecutor Kelly Siegler argued that Susan's tears were fake and that she killed her husband to collect on a $200,000 life insurance policy. Assistant District Attorney John Jordan argued that Susan was not a battered woman. This was divorce by homicide. To demonstrate how deliberately Susan murdered Jeff, the actual bed was brought into the courtroom and the prosecution reenacted the murder for the jury. The DA literally straddled the assistant DA and pretended to stab him all 193 times while the defendant cried a few feet away. The dramatic courtroom scene was unforgettable for everyone who witnessed it. Susan Wright was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 25 years to life. In 2005, abuse allegations against Jeff were revealed, leading to a new sentencing hearing. In 2010, her sentence was reduced by 5 years. She was denied parole twice, but in July 2020, she was finally granted parole and released on December 30th, 2020. She pleaded with the media not to harm her family on her release. The terms of her parole required her to undergo anger control training, secure employment, stay in Texas, and wear a GPS device. Bradley and Kaylee had been adopted by Jeff's brother. Susan hoped her release would enable her to get them back. As of writing the script for this video, Susan was living a quiet, private life in Texas. Do you think that Susan was trying to protect her children by killing Jeff? Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear what you have to say. Also, consider giving this video a like if you liked it. That really helps with the algorithm. Additionally, consider subscribing to the channel for more true crime. Till next time, signing off. This has been Christina.